Today we're going to talk about a story that starts like hundreds of others, but ends like no other. It's the story of a man who went into the forest and never came back. Trite. But what if I told you that he was found 9 years later? He wasn't found in a ravine or a cave. His remains were neatly arranged in the branches of a tree, 3 stories high. And that's the most normal part of this story. What was found nearby left experienced investigators speechless, and the official report became a collection of half-truths. This is the story of Logan Mills, and it will make you look differently at dense forests and what may be hiding in their shadows. This story begins in September 2015. 30-year-old Logan Mills, a resident of Charlotte, North Carolina, was what you might call an experienced hiker. He wasn't an extreme sports enthusiast or a mountain climber. He was a blogger who loved the wilderness. His blog, Quiet Trails, wasn't particularly popular, but it had a loyal following. Logan wrote about trails, gear, and how to spend a night in the woods and feel like you were part of it. He was methodical, meticulous, and always prepared thoroughly for his trips. That's why what happened seemed so strange from the very beginning. On September 6, 2015, Logan set out on a solo hike in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. This is a vast area on the border of Tennessee and North Carolina. This place is wild, beautiful, and, as experience shows, dangerous. His destination was the Clingman's Dome area, the highest point in the park. The plan was simple. Drive to the parking lot, hike a few miles along the Appalachian Trail, then turn off onto a less traveled route to find a secluded place to spend the night. He promised his sister, Anna, he would send her a message the next morning, September 3rd. The message never came. On the evening of September 2nd at around 7 p.m., Logan took the last photo on his phone. It was a view from his open tent of the darkening wall of the fir forest. He posted the picture on his blog with a short caption, "Home for tonight. The night promises to be quiet." It was his last post. Logan Mills did not contact anyone else. When Anna did not receive the promised message on the morning of September 3rd, she did not immediately sound the alarm. Communication in the mountains is unreliable, but when Logan did not respond by evening and his phone was out of range, she began to worry. On September 4th, almost 2 days after the last contact, Anna Mills contacted the park's rescue service. The search operation began immediately. Rangers found his car, a gray Subaru, in the parking lot at the trailhead. Everything was fine. Inside was a wallet with cash and cards, which Logan, out of habit, had not taken with him on the trail. This confirmed that he had safely entered the forest. But where exactly? The search was led by Dwight Farrow, a veteran park rescue worker with 20 years of experience. Later, in an interview with a local TV station, he would say that it was one of the strangest cases in his career. In the first few hours, rescuers and volunteers combed the main route Logan was believed to have taken. They shouted his name, used thermal imaging cameras, and even called in a helicopter. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The most inexplicable thing was the complete absence of any traces. Logan was not a ghost. He weighed about 80 kilograms, plus a backpack with equipment weighing another 15 to 20 kilograms. He should have left traces, but there were none, neither on the trail nor anywhere near it. Rescuers searched every inch of ground, looked into every ravine, and combed through thick rhododendron thickets. Not a single broken twig was found, nor was there a single footprint that could be attributed with certainty to the missing person. And, most importantly, there was no tent, no backpack. This is a key detail. Usually when a tourist gets lost, strays from the path, or is injured, they stay with their equipment. A tent is a shelter. A backpack contains food, water, and a first aid kit. People don't get rid of these things. But in Logan Mills' case, everything was gone. It was as if a man, with all his possessions, had vanished into thin air. The search continued for 10 days. The search area was expanded to dozens of square miles. Volunteers from across the country who knew Logan from his blog joined the search. It was all in vain. After 10 days, the active search was called off. The official version given to the press was standard for such cases. Presumably, the tourist strayed from the marked trail, got lost, and may have been the victim of an accident or adverse weather conditions. The wording in the internal report was more honest. The cause of his disappearance and his whereabouts are unknown. No clues or traces indicate his fate. Years passed. The story of Logan Mills became one of the many legends of the Great Smoky Mountains, another case in the missing persons file. The family was never able to come to terms with their loss. Every September, Anna Mills would come to the trailhead and leave flowers. She was convinced that her brother couldn't have just fallen or gotten lost. He was too careful for that. And now, it's July 2024, almost 9 years later. A group of cavers from Knoxville was exploring karst sinkholes and small caves in a remote area of the park, about 5 miles from where Logan was last seen. It's not a tourist area. Steep slopes, rocky outcrops, dense, almost impenetrable forest. To move around there, you need climbing equipment. One of the cavers, Mark Caldwell, was descending a steep cliff, securing himself with a rope. Halfway down, about 10 to 12 meters above the ground, his gaze caught on something unnatural in the crown of an old, massive spruce tree growing at the very edge of the cliff. At first he thought it was the nest of some large bird, but upon closer inspection he realized he was seeing something else, something white and geometrically correct. He called his partner. Using their equipment, they reached the tree and climbed up the trunk. What they saw made them immediately contact the authorities. In the thick branches, on a sturdy wide fork of the trunk, 9 meters above the base of the tree, were human remains. It was not a chaotic pile of bones scattered by predators. It was something that one of the police officers who arrived at the scene would later describe as a gruesome installation. The skeleton was almost complete. It had been carefully dismantled and reassembled. The spine lay in a straight line. The rib bones were laid out side by side, forming a semblance of a rib cage, and on top, on the ribs, like on a pedestal, was the skull. The long bones of the arms and legs lay parallel to the spine. This was not the work of nature. No predator, no fall, no natural process could have led to such a result. This was the work of someone's hands or paws. Next to the remains, on a nearby thick branch, lay 2 objects: a small folding knife with a half-open blade and a piece of sturdy nylon rope, which experts later identified as a fragment of a tent guy line, the same tent that was never found. The identification of the remains did not take long. A dental record confirmed that it was Logan Mills. The news of the discovery shook the public, but the strangest part was yet to come. When forensic experts began a detailed examination of the site, they noticed not only the tree where the bones lay, but also a neighboring tree standing a couple of meters away. Deep marks were found in its trunk, at a height of 2 to 4 meters. These were not scratches from bear claws, which rangers are very familiar with. A bear leaves parallel grooves when it climbs up. These marks were different. They were deep dents, grouped in 3s and 4s, as if someone or something had grabbed the trunk with incredible force and squeezed it. In the center of each dent was a mark from something sharp, like a claw, but the primary anomaly was the structure of the damage itself. Analysis of the wood, later in the laboratory, showed that the pressure applied to the trunk was so great that it crushed the internal fibers of the tree. A biomechanics expert brought in unofficially would later say that the grip strength required to make such marks was several times greater than that of a human and did not correspond to the known behavior patterns of any predator living in North America. The Sevier County Police Department, in whose jurisdiction the remains were found, was tight-lipped. All questions from journalists were met with the same response. The investigation is ongoing. We cannot comment on the details. But information leaks did occur. A source in the sheriff's office anonymously told a local reporter that the atmosphere in the department was gloomy. No one understood what they were dealing with. The theory of human involvement, a serial killer who dragged the body up the tree and staged the ritual, seemed absurd. To lift the body of an adult man 9 meters up a sheer tree trunk would require a winch or a group of people. But there were no traces of such activity, no ropes, no winches, no multiple footprints at the foot of the tree. The ground was covered with a layer of pine needles that had been there for years. Still, even under it, nothing was found that would indicate the presence of a group of people. The official conclusion, published several months later, was the height of bureaucratic caution. The death of Logan Mills was the result of complex, unidentified circumstances. The influence of natural factors and wild animals cannot be ruled out. The report did not mention the marks on the tree. The case was reopened but almost immediately transferred to the archives without priority status. It was as if the authorities wanted to forget about it as soon as possible. But how could anyone forget a man whose bones were found at the top of a tree, arranged as if they had been prepared for a museum display? And what kind of creature could have done this? What left traces of monstrous, inhuman force on the tree trunk? Logan's camera and the diary he always kept on his hikes were never found. Perhaps they hold the answers to these questions. Probably in the last hours of his life, Logan Mills saw and documented something that was not meant for human eyes, something that still lives in the deepest, darkest corners of the Appalachian Mountains. Something that not only killed him, but also did something to his body that is beyond our comprehension. And that brings us to the next part of this story, where we will attempt to reconstruct Logan's final hours based on the scraps of information and evidence that the official investigation chose to ignore. To understand what could have happened to Logan Mills, we need to go back to September 2015 and try to piece together a picture that the official investigation deemed too fragmented and inconvenient. The fact is that when a search operation yields no results in the first 72 hours, the chances of finding a person alive drop dramatically. Rescuers look for clues, a camp, equipment, anything that can be found quickly. They don't look for anomalies. When they found nothing, they stated the fact. The man was missing. But some details that emerged later, thanks to the persistence of Logan's family and a few concerned individuals, paint a completely different picture. Logan's sister, Anna Mills, after the initial shock of finding the remains had passed, began her own investigation. She hired a private investigator, a former police officer, and they began re-interviewing everyone who could have been in the park that day, and they found something. It wasn't direct evidence, but rather scattered clues that, when pieced together, created a disturbing pattern. The first clue was the last photo Logan had taken from the tent. At first glance, it was nothing special. Twilight, a thick wall of fir trees. But an image analysis expert hired by the detective noticed a detail that had escaped everyone else. In the very depths of the frame, between two tree trunks, a dark silhouette was visible. It was blurred, almost blending in with the shadows. In 2015, it was dismissed as a trick of light and shadow, a pareidolia. but with the help of modern image enlargement and processing software, it was possible to extract more details. It was a vertical, massive silhouette. It did not resemble a bear moving on 4 legs or a deer. It was too tall and narrow, and the strangest thing was that it stood motionless, as if watching. The expert couldn't say for sure what it was, but wrote in his report, "The object has signs of an anthropomorphic silhouette, but its proportions and apparent immobility in low light conditions do not allow for a definitive assessment." This discovery prompted Anna and the detective to dig deeper. They tracked down an elderly couple, the Hendersons, who had been walking along the same trail on September 2nd, but during the day, a few hours before Logan pitched his tent. Their testimony was not even included in the case file at the time, as it was deemed irrelevant to the disappearance. The Hendersons said that when they were about a mile from the Klingman's Dome parking lot, they heard a strange sound. They were experienced hikers and knew the sounds of the forest well. It was not a bear roar, a coyote howl, or a lynx cry. Mr. Henderson described it as a low-frequency, hollow thud, like someone hitting a tree with a heavy rock, but with some kind of internal resonance. The sound repeated 3 times at regular intervals, coming from somewhere deep in the forest, from the direction of a steep slope, where there were no trails. After that, they said, an unnatural silence fell over the forest. The birds stopped singing, and the insects fell silent. This feeling of oppressive silence alarmed them so much that they decided to turn back and not continue their walk. The third piece of evidence came from a man named Silas Blackwood. He is a local resident, a third-generation hunter and tracker who lives on the edge of the national park. His family has lived on this land since the late 19th century. Silas is a reclusive man who does not interact with the authorities. Still, Detective Anna managed to get him to talk. Blackwood said that there are places in the Great Smoky Mountains where even animals don't go. He called them dead lowlands. According to him, these are areas of forest where, for some unknown reason, there is almost no undergrowth, and the ground is covered with a thick layer of old pine needles. You won't find any squirrels or deer there. Silas said that in 2013, 2 years before Logan disappeared, he was hunting in that area and came across strange tracks on the edge of one of these lowlands. They weren't bear tracks. The print was long and narrow, with 3 clearly defined toes and 1 opposing toe like a primate's, but huge. All 3 toes ended in what looked like claw marks. He took several photos with his old phone, but the quality was terrible. He didn't tell anyone about it because he knew they would laugh at him. But when the detective showed him the photos of the marks on the tree found near Logan's remains, Silas's face darkened, and he said only one sentence: "It's still here." So let's try to reconstruct the events based on these facts. It's the evening of September 2nd, 2015. Logan Mills is setting up his tent. He's calm, taking photos for his blog, but something changes. Perhaps he hears the same knocking sound the Hendersons talked about. As a nature researcher, he's not afraid. On the contrary, he's intrigued. What is that sound? An unknown bird? Strange animal behavior? He grabs his camera to capture it. Perhaps he peeks out of his tent and stares into the forest, and he sees that same silhouette, frozen between the trees. At that moment, the blogger's caution and curiosity battle within him, and curiosity wins. He decides that this is a unique chance to capture something incredible. He doesn't plan on going far. He leaves his main camp, which includes his tent, sleeping bag, and heavy backpack. He takes only the bare essentials with him. His camera, perhaps a small assault backpack with water and a flashlight, and a folding knife in his pocket. This explains why his camp was never found. He left it himself, intending to return soon. Logan ventures deeper into the forest, drawn by the sound, and trying to get closer to the mysterious figure. He leaves the trail and finds himself in the same dense, wild forest where no one will look for him. And here he realizes his mistake. The creature he was pursuing was not just a wild animal. It was intelligent. It was luring him. It was leading him to its domain, to the very dead lowlands that Silas had spoken of. We don't know how long this game of cat and mouse went on. An hour? 2? But at some point, Logan realizes that he is no longer the hunter, but the hunted. The thrill of a possible discovery is replaced by primal fear. He tries to turn back, but it's too late. He is lost, and the creature is no longer hiding. It begins to pursue him. This explains the absence of Logan's tracks. He wasn't just walking, he was running for his life, and close behind him was something that moved through the forest, with ease leaving almost no footprints, perhaps jumping from tree to tree or using some other means of transportation unknown to us. The chase ends at that very cliff. Logan is cornered. In front of him is an abyss. Behind him is it. He has no choice. Perhaps in desperation, he tries to climb a spruce tree, growing at the edge to save himself. But it's useless. Judging by the marks on the neighboring tree, the creature is an excellent climber. It climbs the neighboring tree to cut off his escape route, squeezing the trunk with monstrous strength. This is where the final scene takes place. We can only guess what happened next. Perhaps Logan took out a knife in an attempt to defend himself. Maybe he cut a piece of the tent rope he had in his pocket in a futile attempt to make some weapon or trap. But the forces were unequal. The creature kills him right there in the tree. And this is where the strangest thing begins. Something that does not fit into the behavior of a normal predator. Predators kill to eat. They either eat their prey on the spot or drag it back to their lair. Some, like leopards, can drag carcasses up trees to hide them from other scavengers. That would be a logical, albeit gruesome, explanation. But no animal would dismantle a skeleton and neatly stack the bones. This action speaks not of instinct, but of ritual. Of a mind, but a mind entirely alien to humans. Why was this done? To hide the evidence, allowing nature and time to destroy the flesh, to create a trophy, a monument to its victory? Or is it simply a way of organizing the remains characteristic of this species, as natural to it as building a dam is to a beaver? We don't know, but it explains why the knife and rope were left behind. For this creature, they were not evidence, but simply inedible items that belonged to its prey. Just as a magpie drags shiny objects into its nest, it left these artifacts next to the remains, attaching no meaning to them. But what about the camera and the diary? A creature with this level of intelligence and territoriality most likely understood that these items were foreign. It got rid of them, destroyed, buried, thrown into a crevice. It cleaned up the territory. It removed everything except the body itself, which it left as a gruesome warning or simply out of habit in its storage room in the tree. This reconstruction is, of course, only a theory. But unlike the official version, it ties together all the strange facts. The missing camp, the silhouette in the photo, the odd sounds, the traces, the marks on the tree trunk, and, most importantly, the unimaginable condition in which Logan Mills' remains were found. It paints a picture of a creature that lives side by side with us, but according to entirely different laws, a creature that is strong, intelligent, and utterly indifferent to human life. And the most frightening thing is that Logan Mills' story may not be unique. How many more missing persons in the Appalachians could have ended up the same way, but their remains haven't been found yet? And what will happen when someone else accidentally enters his territory? The question that remained unanswered after the Logan Mills case was closed was whether his case was unique, or was he just one of the unlucky ones who was found, while others remained on the missing persons list. This thought haunted Logan's sister, Anna, and the private investigator she hired, a former investigator named Frank Jenkins. Jenkins was an old-school man, a pragmatist to the core who didn't believe in monsters, but what he learned about the Mills case shook his confidence that everything had a simple, rational explanation. Jenkins began the work that the police had failed to do. He immersed himself in the archives of unsolved cases of missing persons in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park and throughout the southern Appalachian Mountains over the past 30 years. He wasn't just looking for missing people, he was looking for a specific pattern, the same set of oddities that had appeared in Logan's case. The criteria were clear. First, the victim was an experienced hiker or hunter, someone who couldn't have simply gotten lost. Second, the disappearance was complete, with no campsite, equipment, or clear tracks left behind. And third, the case file contained indirect references to strange sounds, sensations, or observations that had been ignored by investigators. The results were disturbing. Jenkins found at least 4 cases over the past 20 years that were almost identical, differing only in details. Case 1, October 1988, 45-year-old hunter Michael Perry disappeared from his blind, a special platform in a tree used for tracking deer. He was found by his hunting companions. His loaded rifle was leaning against a tree on the platform. Next to it was a thermos with coffee that was still warm. Perry himself, his backpack, and his radio were nowhere to be found. The search operation turned up nothing. The official report mentioned a possible heart attack and a fall from the tree, but the body was never found. However, in unofficial conversations, one of the searchers mentioned that the ground under the tree was suspiciously clean, without a single broken twig, as if someone had swept it. Case 2, June 2004. 22-year-old botany student Emily Carter disappeared while collecting samples of rare mosses. She was off the main trails but kept in constant radio contact with her supervisor, who was waiting for her at the car. Her last message was alarming. She didn't mention any animals, but spoke of a strange vibration and a low hum that seemed to be coming from underground. Then the connection was lost. Her backpack, containing her samples and field journal, was never found. She disappeared along with all her equipment. Case 3, September 2009, 6 years before Logan. A family of 4, parents and 2 teenage children, disappeared during a 2-day hike. Their empty tent and neatly packed backpacks were found half a mile from the trail. Food, water, and all their gear were still there. The only things missing were the people themselves and their shoes. 4 pairs of hiking boots had vanished. There were no signs of a struggle, no signs of wild animals either. The case is still considered one of the most mysterious in the park's history. How could 4 people get up and walk into the woods barefoot, leaving all their belongings behind? Jenkins compiled these cases into a single report, and, together with Anna Mills, presented it to Park Service Management and the Sheriff's Office. He didn't talk about monsters. He spoke of patterns, about the presence of an unidentified threat in the forest that operated according to a specific predatory scenario, cleaning up the scene of the crime. The reaction was predictable and cold. He was politely told that he was linking accidents separated by years and miles based on speculation, that they didn't have the resources to investigate conspiracy theories. One park official told him bluntly in a private conversation, "Frank, even if we were to imagine for a second that you're right, what do you propose? Close a national park covering 2,000 square kilometers? Could it cause a panic that would destroy the tourism industry of the entire region? We can't do that. It's easier to believe that these people are just lost." It was a dead end. But a week after that meeting, Jenkins received a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end introduced himself as a former federal employee who had been involved in incidents in protected natural areas. He spoke on condition of complete anonymity. This individual confirmed Jenkins's worst fears. According to him, there has long been an unofficial protocol within government agencies for cases such as Logan Mills's. They have a special category called Incidents with X Factor. This category includes disappearances and deaths that do not fit into standard explanations. Officially, these cases are archived. Unofficially, the data is collected in a closed database. According to the anonymous source, they are aware of the existence of an unclassified higher primate in some isolated regions of North America, particularly in the Appalachians and the Pacific Northwest. This is not the snowman of legend. According to the indirect data collected, it is a real, living species, a creature that, as a result of evolution, has occupied a unique ecological niche. It leads a predominantly arboreal lifestyle, which explains its ability to move through the forest almost silently and unnoticed. It possesses enormous physical strength, especially the grip strength necessary for moving along tree trunks. It is omnivorous, but is an active and extremely efficient predator. And most importantly, it possesses a developed, albeit non-human, intelligence. It understands that humans are a threat. It avoids contact. But if its territory is violated, especially if it is noticed, it acts preemptively. It eliminates witnesses, and it cleans up its tracks. It eliminates everything it considers unnatural for the forest, including clothing, equipment, and tents. Why didn't it touch Logan's knife and rope? Perhaps it considered them insignificant, or left them as part of its ritual. And the ritual of folding bones, according to the anonymous source, is the most terrifying and telling feature. Analysts working with this data suggest that it is a territorial marker, a warning to fellow creatures or other predators. This is my territory. This is my prey. This behavior demonstrates not just instinct, but the beginnings of symbolic thinking. According to the source, the concealment of this information is not motivated by malice, but by cold calculation. Revealing the truth would lead to uncontrollable consequences. Mass panic, armed monster hunters flooding into the forests and disrupting the fragile balance, and most likely leading to even greater casualties. Therefore, a tactic of silence and denial has been chosen. It is easier to allow a few people to disappear without a trace every few years than to admit that something lives in our forests that calls into question the dominance of humans on this planet. Anna Mills and Frank Jenkins were left alone with their knowledge. They had a terrifying but logical picture of what had happened, but they had no evidence to present to the world. The Logan Mills case was officially closed. His remains were cremated, and today the Great Smoky Mountains National Park is still open to visitors. Millions of people walk its trails every year, taking pictures against picturesque backdrops, spending the night in tents under the starry sky. They walk in the same places where Logan Mills once walked. They don't know that in the thick shade of the old fir trees, in the dead lowlands where it is unnaturally quiet, they may be being watched. They don't know that the strange tapping in the depths of the forest is not a woodpecker, and they don't understand that the neatly stacked bones at the top of the tree were not just a gruesome sight. It was a message, and now, knowing this story, you have received it too. The forest holds secrets far older and darker than we can imagine, and sometimes, when we venture too far, it reminds us of that.